Hello, welcome to I Hate Rock Music. I am your host, Brian Fox. And this is kind of an unusual video for me. I'll probably end up doing more kind of like this. And it's not really a review of a record, although ultimately it does review two records. And that's the whole idea of Iron Butterfly. What went wrong in 1967? And the reason why I say that is because the first Iron Butterfly album came out, I think, in January of 1968. So it was recorded in 1967, and it had a different lineup than the classic Iron Butterfly band that recorded Ball and In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida and Live 1969. So the original lineup of the band was Denny Weiss on guitar, Daryl DeLoach on vocals, Jerry Penrod on bass, Ron Bushy on drums, and Doug Engel on keyboards and vocals. Only two members that lasted into the next lineup. Of course, when they got Lee Dorman on bass and Eric Braun on guitar, and so I guess the three people, Denny Weiss, Daryl DeLoach, and Jerry Penrod, all left the band after the first album, and so that first album has definitely a different sound than In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, but Doug Engel dominated the band, so his keyboards are all there and his vocals are all there. Although Daryl DeLoach obviously sings a lot of the songs on the first album, and the album did really well. They got signed to Atco. The album Heavy came out, and I think it reached number 20 in the Billboard chart, so it was very well received. And but kind of a low key record, even compared to In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. You know, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida album is definitely dominated by Eric Braun's guitar. And the thing about Heavy is that it's not dominated by guitar. It's kind of a restrained record that's dominated by keyboards and is kind of low key compared to their next two records. And particularly perplexing because Denny Weiss is a killer guitar player. Um, and the fact that he doesn't dominate on the studio album is really quite a shock. And the reason why I say that and know that is because now we can see what the band was really all about when they came out. There's a show that's available now called the Galaxy Club live in July 1967, and it sounds like an entirely different band. It's completely raw, and it's loaded with guitar work. The guitar work really dominates it. So my question becomes, if they have such a great guitar player and they have such a powerful singer in Daryl DeLoach, why didn't that transfer to the first album? Was the first album Heavy would have sounded entirely different if they sounded the way they did in July 1967. And so let's look at the tunes first of all. Of course, both the Galaxy Club July 67 and the album Heavy all have Possession, You Can't Win, Solo, Fields of Sun, the Iron Butterfly theme, and Gentle as It May Seem. And then there's four songs that aren't on the live set: Unconscious Power, Get Out of My Life, Woman, Look for the Sun, and Stamped Ideas. And then there actually is three non-LP songs that were released around the same time that showed up on 45s: Don't Look Down on Me, Evil Temptation, and Love. And Evil Temptation they end up doing at the live show too. But what's interesting about the live LP? Well, there's a couple things that are really interesting about it. One is apparently a lot of the material that showed up on all three of Iron Butterfly's first three albums, they already had written in 1967. So in this live set, Real Fright, Filled with Fear, and Lonely Boy are all in this live set, and then they show up on the third Iron Butterfly album, Ball, in 1969. So that definitely seems to confirm the fact that they had a huge amount of material by 1967, and then just spread it out over three albums. And but the main reason I want to talk about the difference between these two records is because their live sound in 1967 was astonishing. They kind of sound like a cross between the Stooges and the Music Machine. And I know that sounds pretty outrageous to make that claim, but it's crazy. We'll go through the tracks one by one. Real Fright has some just insane guitar runs for 1967, and they're really up in the mix, and they really dominate the song pretty well. There's keyboards throughout all of this, but unlike the Iron Butterfly Heavy album, the guitar is very prominent, and I think that would have gone a long way on the Heavy album. And like I say, right off the bat, you hear Real Fright and you hear the guitar runs that Danny Weiss was doing. It's wild. And the other thing that's really different between the records too is Daryl DeLoach on the Heavy album, the studio album. He sounds okay, nothing that exciting. He fulfills the duties required of him, but on this live set, he is amazing. Um, like I made before the comparisons to Music Machine, he's got that killer garage, those snotty killer garage vocals down, and sometimes he's truly unhinged. There's a song on here called "Gentle as It May Seem," and it's total garage rock. It's almost punk, and it's super fast. And then it kind of reminds me of the Stooges, and the vocals are just insane, and he just spits them out. And then on top of that, you've got this just uh, uh, power guitar and this rhythm section, which is killer too. And that's the other one of the other things I wanted to mention too. Uh, this bass player John Penrod is excellent, and Ron Bushy, boy, he doesn't sound anything like what he on the studio records like he does on this live set. So I've got much more profound respect for Ron Bushy after hearing this live set. So they start out with Real Fright, then they go into Possession. Really cool song, but once again, low key when you get to the studio version. This version is super heavy, uses a really odd guitar scale, and then the guitar is super loud and loaded with fuzz. And then you get to Filled with Fear. Again, really weird guitar effects, super heavy. The guitar is really loud, and the leads are just insane. It's just hard for me to believe that they would put out the album Heavy and they have a guitar player like this, and he's not all over it. So then, and of course, Filled with Fear, it later showed up on Ball. Then we have Fields of Sun. Again, really cool chord progression. The vocals are great, it's super loud, and the guitar is really loud, and just everything about it is so different from their studio work. Then after Fields of Sun, it's Up to You. The vocals are killer, the guitar's killer. It's just frenzied. Then they go into Gloomy Day to Remember, which kind of reminds me more of the studio record. It's a little more tame. The guitar isn't quite as loud, and Doug Ingles' vocals are really nice on it. So that's one of the only things in this set that kind of remind me of the studio album Heavy. So then by the time you get towards the middle of the record, then all hell breaks loose. They do Evil Temptation, which the single is more of an instrumental, but on this record, it's just a total stomper. It's got really, it's super loud guitar, great fuzz tone, and he just spits the vocals out, and it's just crazy. You have to hear it to believe it. I can't even believe that it's the same band. And then they throw out another just blazing rocker, Gentle as It May Seem, and as I mentioned earlier, it's almost punk rock. And then they also had the Iron Butterfly theme on here, which was always one of my favorites because I bought the In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida single in 1968, and Iron Butterfly theme was the B-side. And on the studio record, it's an instrumental, but I noticed on this live version, they actually have a non-verbal vocal line to it where he sings along with its haunting melody. So that was surprising. But even more than the studio version, he whips out some of the craziest guitar sounds ever, and it's even slower and heavier than the studio version. And the studio version is mind bending to me. I'm not even sure how he gets a lot of those guitar sounds. I can tell he's kind of kicking the amp and getting the coils to rattle some. So that's where some of it comes from. But I don't even know how he does some of that stuff. So So between Evil Temptation, Gentle as It May Seem, and Filled with Fear, and those songs, this band is like one of the ultimate garage sounds, one of the ultimate psychedelic bands, and just total night and day from the first studio album. And so they fill out the set with Solo, which is on the studio album, and the bass playing is killer. And I know Lee Dorman's really a good bass player too, and we certainly find that out with Captain Beyond, which he joined later. But this guy Jerry Penrod is an excellent bass player. So to have a bass player and a guitar player and a drummer that good in 1967, kudos to them. And then Lonely Boy is really nice on this too, because we have the version that Iron Butterfly did on Ball, and it's a lovely little love song. It really is. Doug Ingles' song vocals are really heartfelt and unique sounding. But on this live record, the lead runs are just crazy, and he uses jazz chords and jazz scales, which of course are missing on the version they recorded in the studio a couple of years later. So what a treat! And then they finish up with "You Can't Win," which once again just has a super loud guitar. So that's the bottom line with the topic of this video is I was a big fan of Iron Butterfly in 1968 when In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida came out. Um, it was one of the first 10 singles I ever bought, and I love that sound. And when I got the Heavy album, I just was surprised. And of course, it had different lineup, so I kind of expected it to be different. But the fact that it was so keyboard oriented and so low key, I just I like it as kind of a novelty. And as a different Iron Butterfly record, not knowing what I know now, it's a good listen, and it's a solid psychedelic record, albeit somewhat undramatic. All the reviewers at the time talked about how crazy and loud the record is, but by after hearing everything we've heard in the last 50 years, they don't sound loud and wild. So anyway, God damn it! I wish they'd had the live sound they had in July 1967 on that studio record and had guitar dominate it, because what an amazing band in 1967, and just so over the top and so crazed with such a killer rhythm section and a just startling guitar player. So anyway, that's why I want to gripe about what happened. What changed them? Did Doug Ingle? He was the leader of the band, arguably. Did he want the first album to be more keyboard oriented? Did the label come to them and say, "Hey, tone it down a little bit. It's too wild." But I don't know. It just seems to me that they removed that big guitar sound and the fuzz guitar and the frenzy off that first record so much. It just boggles my mind. Like, why would they change their personality so much? Particularly when, they were a club favorite around California in 1967. So they got a really good deal with Atco, and the record charted really well. So what's the explanation for it? And I dug through some interviews with various members of the band. I haven't really found anything. So if there's any diehard Iron Butterfly fans out there, and you know more about why they restrained themselves so much and downplayed all that frenzy and guitar insanity by the time they put out that first album, I'd really like to know. And I'll finish with one last note that really surprised me. So Eric Braun, Danny Weiss, Daryl DeLoach, and Jerry Penrod left after the first album, and two of those guys ended up forming Rhinoceros, and then they brought in Eric Braun, and I guess it took Eric Braun a long time to learn their set, and you can dramatically hear the differences between Danny Weiss and the Galaxy Club compared to Eric Braun on, let's say, the Iron Butterfly 1969 live album. Eric Braun's got a cool sound too, but he definitely couldn't step into the shoes of Danny Weiss, who was doing amazing things in 1967. But here's the part that's going to blow your mind. When Danny Weiss originally left Iron Butterfly. Supposedly, Jeff Beck almost joined, Neil Young almost joined, and Michael Monarch almost joined. And Michael Monarch kind of makes sense. Of course, he was the original guitar player in Steppenwolf, and his sound would have blended really well with the Iron Butterfly sound that we know. But it just is completely crazy to think about either Neil Young or Jeff Beck joining the band. But I guess there was that much buzz, and they were that successful that people like that were considering joining the band. So anyway, if you haven't listened to the Iron Butterfly July 67th, the Galaxy Club, I got the link below, and I'll also put the link to the Heavy album from January 68, and you can listen to them back to back and see what I'm talking about. What happened? What could have been if they brought that live band into the studio and recorded it the way they actually sounded? Iron Butterfly Heavy would be one of the greatest garage rock psychedelic records of all time. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching I Hate Rock Music.